Hello, everyone. Let's wait for everybody to get connected. Hopefully you guys were able to see some of the other videos on value as well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start out with talking about things to look for in value in order to describe form. So for me, what I use value for is I mostly use it to describe form or like the 3D-ness of things. So I use value to like push that. So I'm going to give you some quick things to look for when you're looking at your subject or your photos or whatever you're looking at when you're doing your own shading. And then we're going to move on to the animals. I think okay, we have one person. Let's sign up and sign up. So if you have a photo that you want to shade for the second part of the class, go ahead and find one. You don't have to copy the one that I am doing. But first, we are going to just talk about value in general. And this might be a review for some of you guys. I don't know if the other teachers, if you've done any of the classes on value earlier in this week, they might have talked about this too. But I'm just going to talk about general value shapes for a second. And then we're going to move on to the drop-down camera. But I'm going to take it off of this. So I drew this real quick based on this. It's just my coffee cup that I stuck really, really close to a light. And I did this because I want to talk about really, really simple forms first before we get on to the more complicated ones with the animals. So for some of you, this is going to be review, but I want to point out what to look for because sometimes you don't know what you're looking at. So first off, we have a light side and then the dark side, right? So I think most people know this is closer to the light. So it's going to be a lighter value or a lighter shade. And then we have some highlights. Some of you might be familiar with what a highlight is. Boop. Right there. So the lightest part of our thing, in this case, it's a mug, right? So those are usually easy to spot, especially if it's shiny, because the highlight is really bright. So I'm just going to circle it on here, on this little card that I did. So there's a highlight. The next thing to look for is the light side versus the dark side. And over here on the dark side, we have a shadow, right? So when most people think of shadows, they think of like this type of shadow, where an object is casting a shadow on the ground. But there's actually shadows on forms or on objects. This is called a core shadow. And then I drew it right here with my dark charcoal. So I'm just going to point out where that is on my paper. So we have highlight. We have the light side. And then we have the core shadow. Core shadows are super important because that's what's helping this cylinder look like a cylinder. That's what makes it look 3D, is that core shadow. And then we have our cast shadow over here. Cast shadows are also easy to spot. It's this cup is blocking the light from hitting the table, right? Most people are familiar with that. So we have a cast shadow, core shadow, but then what gets neglected a lot of times in drawings is the reflected light. Hopefully this is review for some of you guys. If you notice over here, that core shadow doesn't go all the way to the edge of this cup. There's a strip that's lighter than the core shadow, and that's called reflected light, or sometimes it's also called bounce light. So what it is the light is hitting the table back here and bouncing back onto the cup. And you can also see it over here on the front. The light is hitting this really bright paper and bouncing back onto the cup. So it's kind of lighter in this section. I'm just going to write, I see some here. So when you are shading your things, there's also some inside the cast shadow, right? There's parts where the cast shadow is darker and parts where the cast shadow is lighter. It's there, these things are bouncing light off of each other. So when you're shading your things, you don't just go, okay, here's a light side and here's a dark side. What makes it look 3D is getting that core shadow in there, right here, core shadow. And then also I have a strip of reflected light here. So I didn't spend very much time on this at all. I spent like 5 minutes on this, but I was looking for those shadow shapes and how they help me make this thing look more like a cylinder, look more 3D. If I took out that reflected light, let me grab some charcoal here. I'm gonna try to draw and hold this at the same time. That's not gonna work. Have you hold this, and then I'll draw. If I took out that reflected light and made it all shadow, it's gonna start looking more flat. Like it just flattened it out. But if I add that reflected light back in, it helps it look more like a cylinder. So this is just stuff to keep in mind and to look for when you are looking at images or real things and drawing from those, trying to get the shading to make it look more like a 3D object. So hopefully that makes sense. I have, some of you noticed my Cuphead toy. This is a really simple form. This guy, I forget this guy's name, it's like Barnacle something, Barnacle Beard, something like that. But you can see all of those light shapes on our friend here, Mr. Barnacle Beard. We have like a cast shadow over here, and then his head is blocking the light onto his shoulder, so there's another cast shadow there. But there's also core shadows. If you look at his arm, right, there's like a shadow going through here, and around his leg, there's a dark part right here, there's a core shadow, and then there's a light part. What that light part is, that's reflected light hitting this floor piece and bouncing back onto his leg, right? So a little more complicated, but you can still see all of those light shapes. And then like there's a highlight here. Highlights are usually little tiny points. Let me put this a little closer so you can see them better. So that is what we are going to look for in our drawings for today. I'm going to show you what I'm going to be drawing from real quick. Are there any questions, first of all, before I move on about light shapes and shadow shapes? Hopefully it is all clear. Okay, so I just pulled this camel dude off of the internet because I could see very, very clearly all of the shadow shapes that I needed. I'm going to go over first and make it black and white. Oop, I need to be back over here. Adjust, saturation. I'm going to turn the saturation all the way down, just so I can real quick get this photo in black and white. And then I'm gonna draw over it. So you can see what I'm talking about with like the core shadow and stuff like that. So the first thing I noticed is there's a really, really deep shadow shape like over here. That is actually a core shadow. And what that's describing is it's describing the like roundness of his body, right? If I sketch out his whole body, this whole area is core shadow, right? And then there's another one over here. Right, so when I draw that, I want to make sure I get that in because that's going to make my camel feel more 3D. And then there's like a light spot all through here. This is more light or mid-tone, you know, down here. There's a cast shadow on this back leg, which makes the back leg a really, really dark tone. Right, so whenever I'm about to draw a new thing, I just look at it and ask myself, where are all the major shadow things? So those are like the major cast shadows I'm seeing, and then on the ground, obviously, there's a big cast shadow over here. Core shadow, there's a core shadow down around his neck, core shadows going down the legs. There's a core shadow like right here. I'm going to use those to help me describe the 3D shape of this camel. And then the bounce light, I want to look for the light spots as well, where the light is bouncing. Usually it's from the ground. That can be a little rougher to see. But if I think of these legs as tubes, you know, there's going to be core shadow down here, light side, and then maybe some bounce light coming off of that. Let's just clear this layer. All right, so this is what I'm going to be working from. Let me actually, Scott, I'm going to email my reference photo to you just in case people need it, but feel free to use your own photo. And if you can't make it black and white, that's okay too. You just got to look for the darker areas and the lighter areas and shade those in. All right, I'm going to get my table set up. I'm going to get a new piece of paper and then start sketching out this camel. And then I'm just going to use paper for pencil for this one. Okay. So if you guys have tone paper, by the way, and you want to practice value using tone paper, that is easy as well because it gives you a middle tone to start out from. And then you can go lighter using a pencil or darker using a pencil. It saves you a lot of time because you don't have to build it up. But I'm going to try on this one just using normal pencil. So we get two different examples for how to do shading. So when I'm doing white paper and shading, obviously the white becomes the highlight. And so every mark I put down is like a darker and darker tone. So I'm going to start out sketching this camel. So if you remember back to like week 1, where we did line and did all the bones, and kind of combining that with what I know about form. And I know that there's this big egg shape right here. And this is the back legs over here. And then here are the camel shoulders. They look kind of like a triangle to me. And I'm staying very, very light on this sketch. Here are its joints. I'm just going to do them as lines. Here's where I'm seeing where all the feet end up. So I'm being very undetailed to start out with on this sketch. His legs are short. Let's make them a little longer.
A quick question for everyone. So if I add the photo to the spotlight like this, does that take away anyone's view of Naylene's drawing, or is this okay for everyone? Looks good. Okay.
Okay.
Are you okay with that, Naylene?
Excellent. That sounds awesome. Okay,
Now
so this
everyone's on
is
different devices, so I just
yeah,
wanted to make
yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I'll make sure everybody can see. So this is my, like, I call it a scribble sketch. I'm just trying to see where all my major joints are. It's like a elevated stick man of a camel with some form on it. So if you remember back to the day we did form, and we did those cross contours, I'm just gonna let's lightly erase around here so I can focus on the body. There's the hump. So this whole section is where I'm seeing that really, really obvious core shadow from before. And there's his knee. So I'm just worrying about the big forms so far. I'm just gonna lightly kind of outline my shape. Now, when I'm doing a really value-focused drawing, I have to draw the lines to start out with so I know what forms I'm doing these values on. But I don't want to rely on a heavy outline over the whole thing for my final one. I want my values to be strong enough where I almost don't have any lines around it. So the thing about core shadows, they describe the form, but they can also be kind of soft. So I'm just going to start there and hatch through. And then if you have a different way of shading, if you like to just like use the side of your pencil and scroll back and forth, that's okay too. However you get the pencil lead on the paper is good.
Nathaniel has his hand up.
Yes. Oh, nice. That looks really cool. Is that a lemon or something? Excellent. Yeah, I like how you're using value to make that lemon seem more round.
Thank you.
That is just what we're looking for. So right here, I know for eventually what I'm going to do to separate this leg from the rest of the torso is have a really, really dark spot like right here instead of a full line that's going to carry the eye through the drawing. I'm just going to lightly go over this whole torso of the camel. So I know I want my whitest white to just be the white of the paper, but that means everything on this camel that isn't like the whitest white possible is going to have some pencil lead on it. So that's why I'm just going to go over all of this with just a light brushing of pencil. And I'm going to start with the big shapes first. And then get more and more detailed as I go into. I don't want to start like honing in on this knee. The knee has a bunch of wrinkles on it. And each of those wrinkles is creating another shadow, right? But I don't want to start my drawing getting all into the meticulously sketching out all of those tiny, tiny little shadow shapes, because what if later on when I'm doing my drawing, I realize this knee is in the wrong place and I have to move it. That's not going to work. So I'm just going to go piece by piece. Around this leg, I'm seeing a core shadow around the back of the leg here. So I just mark off that spot and then I'm going to lightly shade it in. It's like making a puzzle. And it's darker over here and lighter over here. And then as I move through the drawing and get more and more detailed on the drawing, my shapes will get smaller and smaller and more detailed. But I'm going to start with the big shapes first. This entire leg, mostly up to this point, is in cast shadow. And it's very dark. It's like the darkest part of the camel. It helps sometimes too if you squint your eyes. So if you're looking at a photo, squint your eyes and go, okay, where is the darkest dark on this photo, on this creature? And then where is the lightest light before you even start sketching? Normally I would go through this sketch. So like I'm actually drawing out the feet and whatnot, but I wanted to get to the value and before I ran out of time. So that's why this drawing's kind of hinky. So I want to make sure I'm building up these values. So you look at the whole thing, this back half of the camel is starting to kind of pop out and the rest isn't. So we can move on to this side. There's a lighter spot, like some animals won't have a strong highlight. Highlights are usually good for shiny things, will tend to have a very strong highlight, and animals are like more furry and whatnot. But there is a lighter spot over here on its shoulder. So I'm erasing out that spot. Okay. Is anybody doing a different animal for their drawing? So Tater says he's doing a 4-eyed dog with antenna. That is awesome. Remind me before the end of class, because I found some of my, I did a project in college where I was going to draw a bestiary. So I have some weird monsters that I drew in college. So what we're going to do for next week is like the putting it all together week. And so I think what I'm going to do is try to do a full illustration of an animal. And I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do yet. I might revisit one of those monsters that I did when I was in school. But be thinking, if you guys have any favorite animals or an animal you want to do, or if you want to invent like a crazy animal, that would be cool too for next week. And then we're going to try to do as full an illustration as we can in that hour. So right here, there's a cast shadow. I want to make sure I capture that. Whenever something is casting a shadow onto a different object, that's why we call it a cast shadow, because it's casting. So like right here, this camel on the ground, you know, I'm just going to do like a squiggly, it's like a flattened out camel shape like this. So that's a cast shadow. But when there's a shadow on the object itself, that's just from the way the object is shaped in 3 dimensions, that's called a core shadow. So that's the difference. So on this camel, we have cast shadows like over here, and then core shadows over here. I should do the tail. That's kind of important. So I'm squinting my eyes at that tail because that helps you see the more general form of the object instead of all the details. We want to do the general forms first. So I'm looking at a tail. It's almost as dark as this leg. And there's a little light spot on it right there. I'm putting a mid-tone on these legs. Now I want these legs again to feel like a tube. So when I put my shading on them, I'm not going to go flat back and forth. I'm actually curving the lines. Let me pull it in a little bit more so you can see. When I do my shading, my more detailed shading, I'm actually curving it around like it's in a circle because I want it to feel like a cylinder, like a tube. Do it over here too. So that can help a lot to make your forms feel more 3D. Just the way you put down your shading. And then this one, because it's a cast shadow, I'm going to have it be more flat. And that helps push this leg back and this leg forward. I'm going to turn my pick back. Okay, I have greatly neglected this face on this dude, so let's fix his face. Like that. There's kind of a hump on his forehead. Then his nose goes out, and he has a nostril here. I got a little jaw open. And there's a very dark shadow behind his head. That's going to help separate his head from his neck. Let's do that. So yeah, I'm not very careful on my first stage, my first pass of putting in values, because I want to see the whole thing so I can compare shades and then start getting into describing the forms and getting more and more detail. This is eye. So I just sort of lightly hatch over the whole thing, and then I start pulling out more of the details, and then I can, you know, I always get more refined later. I go back and I fix it. Nostrils really dark. Faces usually have a lot of tiny, tiny shadow shapes because of all that's going on. There's a shadow shape back here. And then some light area. Camels have really thick eyelashes. So I'm trying to keep this area really dark. So around the ear, there's a dark shadow. Another thing you can do if your animals are kind of hairy and they have a cast shadow around the edge, you know, you can just do hatchies and keep it really rough and make it look more like the texture of hair at the same time that you're doing value. All right, so now there's a core shadow around this neck, and it's very close to the edge of the neck. Sometimes core shadows are very close to the edge of the form. there's also a lighter area. So with my kneaded eraser, I'm taking pencil off, but I'm also kind of blending it too. Very, very light touch. Kind of blend that out. So I kind of have a first pass on the whole camel. It's not very refined as far as like rendering goes. I'm still missing some things, but I can still see that whole solid camel. There's some hair over on his hump here. I'm not sure, but I think what was going on in this picture was the camel was like walking through mud or something. Because all down on his legs, if you squint your eyes, it's a little bit darker, but that could just be how the animal is. It just has darker lower limbs. So as I go through and I'm putting more and more shadows, I have to keep going back to the shadows that I did before and beefing them up. I started with the darkest shadow over here, but now that I've gone through and put some shading on the overall camel, that shadow's not looking as dark as it should be. So I'm gonna go back over it and like up it. It's dark over here and then fades out. A lot of times shadows will just fade out. And then over here, this where it's almost black, and go back over that too after I sharpen my pencil. And beef it up, because when I squint my eyes at this photo, this back leg is almost black. It's really dark. I'm not being very careful about that cast shadow because it's just kind of a flat shape. And I want the focus to be more on like actual camel man. But I can do some of the background. So when I'm doing an illustration and I want it to be focused on the animal, it's nice to have some background there, some environment like we did last week. But I don't want to take the focus away from my focal point, which is the camel. So I'm gonna make the shading really fuzzy and a little more flat. So there's like grass and water here, you know, and stuff like that. But I'm not gonna try to draw that with a lot of detail. You know, I may do some details around the camel, like maybe this line, the sand. I'll do more detail on. And then some, this is like marshy grass area. I can do like layers of grass. But I still want it to be kind of fuzzy and lighter. So if you remember from last time, darker values will tend to pop out to the front, and lighter values will tend to get pushed to the back because of perspective. I'm also leaving a little bit of a halo around the camel. I'm not going right up to the camel. Just giving it a little bit of space because I want it to remain the focal point of this drawing. There's some like hills and stuff back here. The background has all shades and values too. But you know, for art, you don't have to draw exactly the way that the photo is. You can choose like, hey, maybe this is important, maybe this is less important. And then I'm gonna have this background like fade out. So I'm not gonna go all the way over to the edges of the paper. I'm just gonna try to focus on this area around the camel. Now I'm getting into tighter and tighter areas of value. This is where we get more refined. This is actually pretty sharp over here. But still, you know, just going back over and over. So I think I'm missing a shadow over here on the hump. I had too much of a shadow on the front, and the shadow should be on the back. So the light's coming from up here. Ooh, I didn't realize how much time passed. Who wants to share what they're working on, even if you're not done?
Here's Kat.
Hey, Kat.
Hello. I kind of decided to continue working on something I was already working on, but
Nice. Who is this?
it's a character from a game I like. The species is called Sousa.
Okay, that's why it looks like it has a sousaphone wrapped around it.
Mhm.
That's awesome. So what I like about the value that you did on yours is you're separating the character from what's wrapped around it with that very, very dark shadow. That looks awesome.
Yeah. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thanks for sharing with us, Kat. Okay,
You're
did you
welcome.
see who was next, Scott?
Here's Liliana and Heather Rose.
Oh, excellent. Is that a zebra or?
It's a zebra. I kind of was just trying to sketch it, so it's not very good. But
No, I could tell. It was like I was like that. The mane looks too zebra-ish to be a horse. For a second, I thought it was a horse. I'm like, no, that's a zebra. they're sort of slightly different. That is awesome. Ah, okay. Were both of you looking at the same picture?
yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, so two different approaches to the same zebra. That is awesome.
Thank you.
All right, cool. Was Tater Tot next?
Tater Tot, yes.
Get that.
This is Herschel. He's my alien dog. But
Excellent. Yeah, so there's a lot of tones going on there.
Thank
Very
you.
nice.
Here's Evie.
Hello. So I was just drawing my cat, but it's kind of hard because there's a lot of black.
Yeah, so the markings create different tones as well on that cat.
Yeah.
So yeah, what's successful about like a lot of these is if you look at them from far away and you can still tell what they are, like that's a successful drawing. That's how we want to look at them. Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Evie.
Thank you.
All right, so Nathaniel's next.
All right, trying to find his video. Oh, there it is.
No worries. Yeah, just take a second.
I'm experimenting with watercolors.
Ooh, excellent. Yeah, so now we're seeing shading with watercolor. And so, yeah, I like how you're trying to make the cheeks. Oh, those things are awesome. Those brush pens.
Yeah, they're very good than the regular brush pens.
Yeah. You can, when you fill them up with water. Yeah, great experiments. We can see how some other materials work. Very cool. Did anybody else want to share? So I'm going to go through some of my stuff that I found. So I picked a camel because I found these drawings that I did in school. So these are on tone paper and it's just marker and pen. For that class we had to draw pen. So I did a bunch of these creatures. So I think I might do one of them for next week. So this is like a camel mixed with a goat mixed with like wings. And then I had like this dude. Right, so they're not like great shading at this point, but I think I might do one of these guys. So we had to do a project that was something based off of an insect. So this dude is like a combination of a bunch of insects, but a dragon. So that's why it has 6 limbs. But for this one, what ended up working was keeping the back legs. They're just simple shapes and just shaded really dark. And then that pushes it back. And then the light on the rest of the body will like bring it forward. Those are simple shading things you could do. I don't know what I'm going to do for next week. I haven't figured that out yet. But you can do crazy stuff. You know, you can do like mixed up characters. Here's one. Here's another one. This is a dragon and a turtle. And I forget what I used for the feet. I think it was like a lizard, Komodo dragon or something. Yeah, so if you guys are familiar with I think it's the 30-60-10 rule when you're like combining animals. I try to have 3 animals, and then it's like mostly one animal, and then to a lesser extent another animal, and then like a dash of a 3rd animal. So that way you can kind of keep track of what we're doing. So you don't have to do like a crazy hybrid animal like this one for next week. If you just want, like we did on this class, to get a photo and like really study that photo for the illustration, I want to do a color one for next week, because color was one of the elements we worked on too. And value and color are kind of intertwined, because, you know, some colors, some reds are going to be darker than other reds, et cetera, et cetera. But if you are coming next week with us, when we do, like, I think we called it put it all together week, where we put all of the elements that we've been learning, all the basics together into one illustration. So I think I'm going to do that.
There's a suggestion for a class in the comments. The suggestion is, can we do a class on human proportions?
That would be awesome. I'd love to do a class on human proportions. I don't know when we'll fit it in with the theme months, but I will bring it up. If that's a class that you guys want, we can absolutely do that. I'm writing it down. Yeah, I love hearing from you guys what you guys actually want to learn about, because that gives me more ideas on stuff to do. Yeah, because human proportions can be rough. That takes a lot of practice too. So before I forget, Scott, can you put up the link for the donation website? Before I forget to do that. Yeah. Yeah, so if you guys want more of these classes, we want to keep them free for as long as possible. So ask your parents if you guys are able to donate. Every little bit helps. Thinking. Since Lilian and Heather Rose brought that up, are there any other like subjects that you guys really want to learn about for drawing or art or animation or anything? While I continue to sketch around this camel dude.
Peter says a class on caricatures would be fun.
Okay, cool. Have you guys tried to draw a caricature before? All right, so got some yeses.
I actually brought this up before, but a while ago, Evie suggested class to, let's see, draw a particular character or something in their own style.
Okay.
Everyone's own style.
All right, so I got caricatures and then character in different styles.
So in everyone's like own personal style.
Yeah. Styles can be, yeah, again, like very personal, and they also change, right? So as you're drawing, you know, if you look back on drawings that you did last year, that was like, it was me fun seeing my college drawings, and seeing how my drawing has changed. So not only are you learning more, but it's just kind of the natural course of styles to evolve over time. But we could probably pull up, I think what I would do for that one is like, if we picked a character, we'd probably pull like 3 or 4 different styles, or maybe we can make like a style map or something, and then see what changes we would make to adapt that character into that style. I know everybody here, no one draws, you know, quite the same. Everybody has their own styles. That's awesome. One thing I'm doing with my tone, if I squint at my drawing and something is blending it together with another thing and it shouldn't, you know, then I'll adjust my tone to make one side either lighter or darker. I think this guy needs to be darker. So like right here with the neck. On the photo, the neck and the head are very separated. There's a very deep shadow there. I want to make sure I capture that. Let's make it go around a little bit better. And there's all these wrinkles over here with the neck, but I did not really draw them. I just simplified it, you know, and if I was gonna go for like hours and hours on this and get it rendered out extremely detailed, you know, then I would go through and do those wrinkles. But honestly, like in order to make this feel solid, you don't really need them. You just need the overall form of this neck that's like a cylinder. Have you guys ever done like a character swap? I think you guys have, where you exchange characters and draw characters in each other's styles. Yeah. Yeah, that's always fun. They'll actually do that on animated movies. 'Cause animated movies, they'll need to have some sort of a cohesive style, but they have hundreds and hundreds of people working on the movie. So like whoever's the head of one character, you know, they might switch as they're developing the design with another one, and then they kind of pull elements of everybody's style together to form a more cohesive one. It's kind of like how people do style swaps with their.
I'd love to have a class where we just draw each other's characters.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. I'll write down style swaps so I'll remember. Yeah, you guys do art trades a lot. Yeah, those can be a lot of fun. Oh, Nathaniel has hiccups. That's okay, Nathaniel. I have hiccups all the time. All right, so as I go through this, I'm using the tone differences to tell the difference between the legs more than the actual lines. I'm trying to get the tones to do that work instead of the lines arts. Ooh, I just saw the time. Evie asks for an action. Let's say, can anybody think of an action to give for Evie? I know it's late. Jump. Jump is good. All right. Thanks for coming, everybody. I know I lost track of time because I was in the zone drawing this camel. Thank you for all the suggestions and all the feedback. That is awesome. And thanks for sharing all of your value drawings. I love seeing those. So be sure to come back next week and bring your favorite character or favorite animal to draw. And I want to do like full-blown illustration through that whole hour. So I hope to see you guys there. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend. Thank you, Scott, for helping me.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
Bye. Bye. Have a good
Bye.
weekend.
Bye.